Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jennifer, and you are listening to the Ego Next Door podcast. Today, we are going to look at the topic of regret, apology, and redemption. More specifically, how regret does not always mean behavior will change, apologizing does not always mean that someone cares, and how redemption does not really require an apology. So, as we covered in the last episode, empathy can be seen as feeling someone's pain, the ability to understand and share the feelings of someone else. Apology, on the other hand, is the verbal acknowledgement for causing or contributing to a problem. However, this is so much more complicated than we initially expected. And today, we will delve deeper into this. Many descriptions look at apology as an expression of regret or remorse. But apology can often be just a pretense and not a genuine feeling to grant the victim the closure they may need. We often view apologies as a magical path to redemption, but in reality, they can be nothing more than a strategic front to manipulate others. While apologies can carry significant weight, they are not innately transformative. They don't undo the past or erase the harm caused by our actions. As humans, we are flawed. We sometimes hurt others, intentionally or unintentionally. And we sometimes act without considering how our actions might negatively impact someone else. There is, however, an important distinction between redemption and apologizing. Apologizing, or even recognizing one's mistakes, is not the same as achieving redemption. For some people, saying I'm sorry might be difficult, but for others, it is incredibly easy. This was something that took me so long to understand because as a survivor of abuse, I spent a long time in my life seeking for verbal validation and admission of wrongdoings, expecting that to be the therapeutic key that would help me heal. Restoring balance is key to achieving a sense of fairness, and it is a fact that transgressions result in debts that need to be paid back. How that payment is made is a whole other story. The act of saying these words does not change the underlying facts or consequences of one's actions. Moreover, the word sorry itself is deeply nuanced. It's not that saying sorry is meaningless, but taking accountability requires much more than just uttering these words. In fact, according to multiple studies, a meaningful apology consists of admitting guilt, acknowledging wrongdoing, expressing regret, offering compensation, and making a commitment to change. Not only this, but a strong, meaningful apology also includes timing, empathy, and intensity. Far too often, people apologize as a way to relieve their own conscience, rather than to genuinely address the harm they caused. For example, someone might come to you years after a hurtful incident and apologize. But are they truly apologizing because they recognize they hurt you and regret their actions? Or are they doing it simply to feel better about themselves? Many times, people apologize to reinforce their delusion that they are good and moral individuals. By apologizing, they create the illusion of a clean slate, believing that they can start over without addressing the actual harm they caused. Especially because, according to research, there is a strong correlation between self-forgiveness, entitlement, and narcissism. Studies show that narcissism is strongly linked to self-forgiveness, while a tendency towards guilt is linked to self-punishment. It appears that individuals who experience some combination of anxiety, tension, remorse, and regret in response to their wrongdoing may be more likely to punish themselves. Apologizing has also become fashionable. From the infamous apology mania, in which famous people repeatedly apologize for a multitude of offenses, to the transactional nature of apologies, which turn them into bland, negotiable commodities in court settlements. Gift giving is classically known as a way to make amends in an attempt to compensate for damages. However, this can often be perceived as manipulative, and rightfully so. Without a verbal apology, a gift can create even more distance between the wrongdoer and the victim. It is scientifically proven that most people regret not apologizing as opposed to not apologizing. However, as sugar-coated as this sounds, it is important to understand what set out an apology. Was it backhanded? Was it fear-based? Was it insincere? Was it demanded or forceful? One big question in research about apology is whether wrongdoers might come to regret decisions to apologize or to withhold apology. Of course, this could not be answered without taking into consideration the motivations for a wrongdoer to apologize in the first place. Many people apologize to avoid the potential negative feelings that may come with a non-apology, such as personal remorse, self-punishment attitudes, or a sincere belief that the offended party is innocent and is granted the apology. When the person at the receiving end of an apology sees an apology as insincere and manipulative, chances are it will backfire. Similarly, apologies of leaders are not always taken seriously and may in fact be more often taken at face value than whatnot. And when people view their leader as trustworthy or caring, they will more likely attribute sincerity in the apology. Scientifically speaking, apologies don't always alleviate the feeling of anger in the victim, and therefore is not always effective to alleviate the experience of anger. It is important to reflect on the motivations behind apologies, whether you are giving one or receiving one. When apologizing, ask yourself, is it because I don't want someone to think poorly of me? Am I apologizing out of self-interest? Or is it because I genuinely care about the victim and regret hurting them? Similarly, when receiving an apology, it's worth questioning whether the wrongdoer is motivated by a desire to help you heal, or if they are merely trying to absolve themselves. Psychiatrist and scholar Aaron Lazare, known for his influential work on apology, insists on the importance of quality apology. A good apology involves explaining why the offense was committed, making it clear that the intention was not to harm the victim, and the victim must see that the wrongdoer apologizing is in distress. The victim must see the wrongdoer's sincerity by communicating guilt, anxiety, and shame. Fake apologies are simply apologies without remorse. An apology prefaced by, "If anyone has been hurt by my actions, I am sorry," usually do not indicate remorse, and is often referred to as conditional apology. In fact, many people apologize without feeling remorse. There is a difference between apologizing out of remorse or regret. Remorse is generally empathetic. Regret can be self-serving. Speaking on the topic of apology, I would like to address the concepts of mistakes and regret. As humans, we make mistakes. Sometimes we do bad things and feel no regret. At other times, regret only emerges when we realize the consequences of our actions. It's also natural to prioritize ourselves in life. Self-care and self-love are essential because if we don't take care of ourselves, no one will. However, when our mistakes hurt others, especially in ways that were avoidable, we must examine whether our subsequent apologies are truly meant to help the person we hurt or to ease our guilt. One may, of course, argue that if someone struggles to forgive themselves, then they are most likely not narcissists. However, even self-forgiveness can be self-serving and does not automatically serve as evidence for honest self-reflection. The reason for this is that self-forgiveness comes from a position of wanting to clear one's own perception of oneself, not of wanting to genuinely redeem a relationship and offer closure to the person they harmed. In cases where arguments or disagreements harm a relationship, it is crucial to assess whether an apology is even appropriate. Sometimes, it might be better to simply move on and maintain distance for the sake of the victim's well-being. Apologizing solely to feel like a better person or to shift the emotional burden onto the other individual is not true accountability. Moreover, people who refuse apologizing often become more committed to their harmful behavior, even when that behavior is socially deemed as wrong. Not only this, but if someone refuses to take accountability and make amends, they are often revealing the intention behind their own self-serving interests, proving their mindset of harming others without remorse. As I have personally witnessed, the contrast between sincere and self-serving apologies is very pertinent in interpersonal relationships. Reflecting on personal experiences, I used to believe that if my mother apologized for her actions, I would forgive her. But I've come to realize that forgiveness is not possible when there is no genuine remorse. You can't forgive someone who isn't truly sorry. While you might try to explain to the person how they hurt you and why your decision to create distance is justified, it ultimately doesn't matter if they don't recognize their wrongdoing. If they see your reaction as an overreaction or fail to grasp the harm they caused, the problem is much deeper than it initially appears. So, yes, even if my mother were to apologize, I know it would not be a real apology. In fact, when serious mistakes are made, there is no ball in their court. The responsibility lies entirely with the person who caused the harm to make genuine amends. So, to her, apologizing would merely serve as a way for her to relieve her own conscience and portray herself as the one making an effort, while casting me as the unforgiving party. The reality is, she would never apologize because she does not believe she has done anything wrong. She has always believed it was my duty to serve her, and any action that deviated from that duty was unacceptable. I also know exactly how I could redeem myself in her eyes. By submitting to her narrative and accepting the role of the bad person, despite being the victim. It would be easy. Buy her a house filled with luxuries and amenities, and she would feel satisfied. Her values are rooted in money and status, which are entirely opposite to mine. Despite any material rewards I could have gained by staying in that environment, I chose to leave because my safety and the safety of my pets was at risk. Once the lives of those I love are threatened, there is no redemption, in my eyes. No words or actions can erase that kind of harm. When wrongdoers appear to have intentionally done something hurtful, forgiveness is less likely to follow suit. Ultimately, it's about seeking apology with moral responsibility. And how can one expect moral responsibility from someone that doesn't hold up to their own moral standards? In other words, moral responsibility cannot be found in someone who doesn't have morals. This clarifies quite a lot. Because as a parent, partner, or close friend, the person is in a way positioned in a leading position. And therefore, if deep down you do not feel like that person truly cares about you, it is natural to not feel like the apology is sincere as well. In my mother's case, there will never be regret. She has not sought therapy or made any attempt to reflect on or change her behavior. So this is a key question to ask when evaluating an apology. Before saying I'm sorry, has the person who hurt you actually taken any step to change and address their behavior? Too often, those words are wielded like a magical eraser with no real effort to repair the damage. As you may have guessed, apologies predict forgiveness only when people appear highly satisfied with their relationships in the first place. Likewise, how satisfied someone is in a relationship also influences how the person receiving the apology rates its sincerity. On the other hand, there can be remorse without apology. Usually, remorse is a sign that the wrongdoer is experiencing psychological pain and suffering for hurting someone else. Without an apology, remorse may result in lifelong suffering for both the victim and the wrongdoer, leaving no chance for reconciliation. Victims feel like they have a voice when there is empowerment, and according to research, empowerment often comes at the stake of punishment or justice before restoration. Of course, as we have discussed in this episode, restoration cannot simply be performative. Paired with a verbal apology, research has found that a costly signal, such as a gift or any other sacrifice, is perceived as more sincere and effective than just a verbal apology alone. All in all, true redemption requires more than apologies. It demands self-awareness, genuine remorse, and a commitment to change. Without these elements, I'm sorry is hollow and meaningless. Redemption is not achieved through words alone. It is a process that involves taking accountability, making amends, and demonstrating personal growth. If apologies are not followed by redemption and are just words, then they can easily be interpreted as non-canonical. That is, an impolite apology that is backhanded. So more than forgiveness, for victims, the important thing for peace of mind is being able to have closure. And more than apologies, punishment is the thing that makes transgressions easier to forgive. Realistically speaking, closure doesn't always happen. And in future episodes, we will discuss this more thoroughly as well. On the next episode, we will delve into the much-needed action of taking space, prioritizing your needs, especially if you have people-pleasing tendencies, and learning to set healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening to the Ego Next Door podcast. See you soon, and I hope you have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Ego Next Door. And if you would like to support my work, consider becoming a patron to my Patreon creator page at Jennifer Hachia. The Ego Next Door podcast is presented solely for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The content here is not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, or medical treatment of a qualified healthcare provider. Reliance on any information provided here is at your own risk. If you or someone you know is in crisis or experiencing suicidal thoughts, please reach out immediately to someone who can help right away. Call your national emergency services or go to the nearest hospital.